Benoni Tego is a serial entrepreneur with over a decade of experience building businesses around creatives and influencers. From creating a solid vision and culture managing talent and teams to building back-end infrastructure, his work blends the entertainment industry with the startup mentality. Benoni built Issa Rae Productions' foundation and managed relationships with Google, YouTube, HBO, and other platforms. He negotiated brand and digital international content deals and handled all distribution agreements for digital content. Benoni is now the president at Radio, the audio arm of Hooray Media, where he has led the acquisition of music supervision company Bonfire Collective, secured a significant deal with music publishing company Cobalt, secured a label deal with Atlantic Records, and created a sync agency for TV and film. This is Benoni Tego. Benoni, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Excited.
Absolutely. Well, I decided to throw on this hoodie. I don't know if you recognize it, but you might.
Oh, I actually don't even have that hoodie. So you're rocking exclusive.
Well, my girlfriend and I, our worlds kind of collided when I filmed the Insecure dinner. The following day, my girlfriend, she works for HBO. She ended up going to the Insecure event, the festival, excuse me. And so she brought this home. So it was kind of fun to have our worlds collide there.
I love it. Yeah, more to come. We're definitely thinking about some more stuff like it. So stay tuned.
Amazing. Well, Benoni, you are currently you correct me if I'm wrong, but you're the president at Radio, right? That's
Correct.
your term. Okay, cool. Amazing. Well, before we get into all that good stuff, I want to start in your early beginnings, and what kind of led you into the industry, kind of some of your formative years in your early on in your journey. Talk about that. I think you're from Vegas, right?
Yeah. So I was born in LA, but I grew up in Vegas, and I was just in Vegas trying to figure it out. I call myself like a professional trier because I've just always tried things. Just oh, I hear that this is a new buzzing thing. Let me see how I can get into that. So I tried a bunch of different things, and eventually I, found the music industry. And the music industry in Vegas was, a very local scene, and a lot of people, they build cliques and record labels, and they were, trying to promote the artists that they work with. And I did that for a little bit, and eventually I was just like, well, I want to take this to the next level. I was working with a couple artists, but I was like, there's only so far I'm going to be able to get in this current environment I'm in. So I ended up moving to LA. I went to a school called Musicians Institute. That had a music business program. So this was after I had left UNLV, where I was studying business management at UNLV. So came to Musicians Institute in LA, and I just kind of just grinded, man. Just like took all the music business classes, sat in the front of the class, like was a resource to my teachers if they needed interns, etc. And eventually that led to an internship with the Jonas Brothers, and I worked with them for a couple of years. And after they hired me after my internship, worked with them for a couple of years as their assistant, eventually making my way to their day-to-day management team, and the rest was kind of history from there.
Amazing. I think a lot of people that are in positions that they want to be in, it starts with being curious, and I kind of want to touch on that. I just had an interview with Simon. He was one of the co-founders of Gold Diggers LA, which is like a studio slash hotel, and we
Yes.
were kind of talking about this, about that curiosity that leads you to one thing, then that leads you to another, and it's just like the journey that you go through, always staying curious and being willing to learn, will bring you to like so many new opportunities. And I just kind of wanted to hear, it sounds like from the early days that you were curious and it led you to many opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I never been to Gold Diggers, but obviously very familiar with it. I remember when they first opened, if I'm not mistaken, I think. But nonetheless, yeah, I've always been curious. Whether it's my industry or whether it's another industry. I was hanging out the other day with a couple of optometrists, and I have I have no interest in being an optometrist or being in the medical field, but they were just talking to me about their day to day, and I was incredibly curious. And they were talking about, what it's like to start your own practice, what it's like to start your own, where they make their profits from, and how they build their patient list. For me, I would call it clients or audience. For them, it's patients. And that's the funny thing about business. Like you find out really quick that most businesses are the same. Terminology is different, but like the fabric of what makes good business work is all the same. So yeah, I agree. You got to be curious and you got to ask questions. And the reason I think radio has done so well is because we came in and we kind of challenged the status quo of like, these are how things were done before, but these are how we're gonna do things. And we've always asked the question of, okay, well, why were they done that way before? Is that the most effective way? Is that the most profitable way? We always ask those questions, and if we find that there's another way to do things, then we try to go after it.
And that's also what sets you apart in industries too, is instead of just like creating a company, building a company and falling in line and just riding the wave, when you enter a space, like you said, that leads to innovation. What things can be done more efficiently? How can we, be more unique in our approach to these things? And I mean, you guys have done a great job at initiating that innovation with radio. Before we get into that, and before radio was started, you actually worked a lot with Issa Rae, and you were doing a lot of early production stuff. Talk about that and how you guys met and what led to the formation of that relationship early on.
Yeah, I mean, that relationship has been a relationship of innovation. My relationship with Issa Rae, I mean, started working with her when she was working on Awkward Black Girl. And I just came in and said, I see what you're doing. I love what you're doing. I believe in what you're doing. And here are some things that I could bring to the table. And a lot of that was just social media stuff, early business development things of just trying to figure out ways to leverage and build the brand outside of just content. So that was always kind of my thing of just like, okay, you're going to do the on-screen stuff. Let me figure out what I can do around that. IP at the time I didn't really understand IP, but it was really just an IP play. Like in the same way that Disney will take a character and then find 50 different ways to like monetize that character, that's essentially what I was doing, and I just didn't know it. But yeah, that relationship has just been about like constantly challenging the status quo and constantly trying to do things differently. And it's been a great ride. We started off on YouTube with the web series Awkward Black Girl, and that led to a bunch of other web series, and then that eventually led to TV, and then that eventually led to being in the music industry. I had a background in the music industry, so it kind of just worked out when we were able to transition into that. So it all just kind of came together in the right way.
Amazing. And I think, one of the main things that I'm trying to accomplish with this podcast is have it, be educational, but also informative too. And I think having people on like you who have been through, that startup life or being an entrepreneur and understanding what it takes, you're only as good as the information you have. That's one of my favorite quotes. And, when you build upon more information and experience and you almost kind of fail forward, more opportunities come. Do you want to maybe talk about some of those early things that you learned as an entrepreneur going through, working for, it essentially was, maybe you could call it a startup at the time, just because you might be wearing a lot of different hats, doing a lot of different things. But what were some of those early failing forward moments for you?
Well, anytime that you start off with like, a company that has never existed before and you're starting off new, and then you're also trying to be groundbreaking, you're always going to be bumping your head because you're going to be trying to do things that the industry is going to tell you, oh, well, that's not how we do things. Or the industry is going to tell you, no, you should think about it differently. Or quite frankly, the industry might not have respect for you to be able to, do the things that you want to do. So a lot of it is trial and error, and a lot of it is being steadfast about, this is what I set out to accomplish, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to let anything stop me. Now, granted, you're going to have things that are going to be blockers in your way, and you got to find ways to go around those blockers. Sometimes you go through them, sometimes you go over them, or sometimes you got to pivot completely. But as long as you kind of know what your end goal is and where you're trying to go, those things no longer matter. I think, early on we had people that were trying to tell us like what type of content we should be doing, or better yet, we had content that was very successful, and then they would say, oh, yeah, that's successful to a certain level, but in order to scale it, in order to make it bigger, then you need to do XYZ. And you have those things where you have to like say, no, we believe in what we're putting out, and we're going to continue to put this thing out. So, it's kind of it's an ongoing thing. And to be quite honest, now even with radio and how big the company is now, radio or Hooray, our parent company, there's still a lot of the same battles. Now, the stakes are higher now, the money is bigger, the implications are a lot uh, more stringent. But at the end of the day, we still deal with the same things from when we were on YouTube to now we're in the big leagues.
Totally. And I think a lot of young creatives out there, they always might wonder, you know, what that might look like for them if they're, creators or they're filmmakers, or even musicians looking for a label. What was that transition like for you and Issa and the rest of the team going from YouTube and then getting a deal, with HBO and having them distribute it on their platform? What was that transition like for you guys?
Well, it was really a transition. One, it took a forever, like from the time that you saw Insecure on TV to the time that we sold it was like 5, 7 year process. So it took a very, very long time. But, again, once you start getting success, things start happening faster because they're like, oh, you're proven now. But when you're not proven and you're coming and you DIY something, they're like, well, yeah, we know that you could DIY it, but can you take it to the next level? And some people can and some people can't. And that's just the harsh reality. So that process was constantly educating ourselves, but then also educating people on the other side of the table. Like, this is what we're capable of, this is what we bring to the table, this is how we think about things, and these are our goals and our plans. Like, that education process never goes away. I find myself educating people on radio all the time because there's a lot of things that we're doing that just have not been done in the industry before. The way that we think about writing camps, the way that we think about soundtracks, the way that we think about music supervision, the way that we think about partnering with brands, it's all very different. So, in those early days, it's, one, doing good work, but then two, constantly educating yourself and the other side of the table of like what you bring to the table.
Yeah, and the innovation that comes with radio too, like you had mentioned, you guys do writer camps, you partner with brands to do collaborations, you're hosting events, but you also have like a roster of artists. At what moment did you personally say, hey, I want to get into this, I have this past experience? Talk about maybe the formation of radio and what led to signing artists, having a team of music supervisors, and ultimately working with studios like HBO to help them with their creative process as well.
Yeah, we started off as a content company, right? Or as a company that was putting content out on YouTube. And then we, leveled up and we started doing stuff on HBO, and we became a production company where we started doing TV and film projects. And it came down to a point of, we saw how much money we were spending on music. We saw how impactful the music was that we were placing in shows like Insecure, where we will place a song and that artist, their streams would go up, their notoriety would go up, their opportunities would increase. And so we're like, oh, there's actually probably a strategic way, a business like way that we can get into the music business, or the audio business as we call it. And for me, it was kind of seamless because all my relationships were in music, being how I came, I've tour managed, I've managed artists, I've been an assistant, I've done a lot of different things in the music industry. So for me, it was like, okay, well, I understand the TV and film side of the business. I can create something new on the audio music side that can complement it. And that was really the early thinking of just like, there's money that we're leaving on the table, there's opportunities that we're giving to others that we can give to ourselves. So let's just create a company that can be all encompassing and can do that. And that's why we created radio, and we call it the Audio Everywhere Company, because we wanted to be a 360 brand essentially.
Yeah, and a lot of people too might see the industry as, oh, you hire and outsource a lot of other people. But when you keep it in the family like that, when you have a team of people that understand the business and you can keep it internal, everyone's always on the same page. Sometimes obviously everyone wants to have great clients and work with certain agencies when they, when the opportunity comes up. But for you guys, it seems like you guys run a tight ship. You know how these things work. And at the end of the day, it's all about the content that you produce, and it's all really great. I mean, Insecure, obviously one of the most successful HBO shows. Issa, being a great writer, and like I said, you guys just on an executive level too. It seems like you guys have a system. Why music? For you personally, for Benoni personally, why, like, what struck a chord with you early on with music? Was it like certain artists that you listened to that inspired you, or I'm just curious with you personally, what got you into the music side?
Yeah, well, growing up, some of the more successful people that I saw were in music, on TV. I didn't have, I like to say I didn't sometimes have like a lot of overly successful people that were around me growing up. And so, some of the people that I looked up to, some of the people that I was influenced by were business people in music. So like your P. Diddy, your Dave Dash, Steve Stout, people like that I looked up to, and I was like, oh, I want to be like them. It just so happened that they were in music, right? They could have been in TV and film, they could have been in a myriad of other industries, but they were in music. So I said, oh, I like what they do. I feel like I could be that as well. So that is ultimately why I chose music. I mean, obviously, music drives the world, and music travels further than any other medium or any other form of entertainment. In my opinion, I don't have the stats to prove that, but I would venture to say that that's probably the case. And
you,
so,
you can even enjoy music that you don't speak the same language, but you're still moving to it, and that's like the universal language of music.
absolutely, yeah, like I mean, Bad Bunny, like the streaming stats that he got for this year is like he's killing it, and his audience is across the world. But yeah, so for music, it was just something that kind of happened naturally, and then when I got into it, I realized that the music industry was a space that was just had ample opportunity to innovate because once a company in music gets successful at one thing, then they just like double down on that, and they just dive as deep as they can and be in that thing. And so when you start becoming successful and then you start deep diving into whatever your lane is, whatever your vertical is, then you don't really need to innovate because you're making X amount of dollars per year, and that X amount of dollars per year is what is your ultimate goal. So, for me, I got in and I was like, oh, there's an opportunity to innovate. And really, I'm a business person. I'm an innovator. So I love being in a space where I just get to bring new things to the table and work on changing the industry as a whole.
So with artists who may be looking for a deal or wanting to elevate their music, what is appealing to getting your music played on TV or a movie or getting placements there versus taking the route of getting signed to a label, touring, playing shows? Are there any, like, are they both similar in a way, or like how do those differ? Are there some artists that specifically gear their work to be placed there, or like how does that world work?
Yeah, I mean, it's all of the above. There's some artists that are strictly just looking to be the biggest artist in the world. And, to be the biggest artist in the world, a lot of times you need a label because you need funding, you need the resources that a label can provide. But then on the flip side, you have some artists. I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday randomly that was telling me about an artist that is making like six figures a year just because they strictly focused on their music for sync purposes. And so they've signed up with a company that has a library, and a library is basically where there's these companies that just build music for TV and film, and a producer or a network or a studio will just go to that company and say, hey, we need this type of music, and they will pull from it. There's some artists that are specialized in making that type of music for TV and film. And this artist, like on their Spotify, they're not really making that much money. But because they're doing this custom bespoke music for this library, they're making, high six figures, or I wouldn't say high six figures. I'll say, mid to average six figures, right? So
Which is incredible.
which is incredible,
Yeah.
especially if you consider I put my music on Spotify and I'm not making any money, but I'm able to go and do sync stuff and I'm making a lot of money. Like that's great. You found a career and you found a lane for yourself. So it kind of varies on what that person's end goal. Some people want to do both. Some people want to do one or the other. It just depends case by case.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because you know, as an artist, culture, the way culture drives the way people think. I think a lot of sometimes artists might have like imposter syndrome, or they might feel afraid to um, get into that space because you know they're not getting enough plays or they need to look a certain way. And so I think you know hearing you say that people are out there with minimal Spotify plays, but they're making six figures through sync and placements, whatever it may be. Like that's incredible, you know. And there are different avenues that artists can take to you know do what they love and get their work out there. Obviously, you know, any artist, uh, it's difficult. It's always going to be difficult to get your work to break through or get noticed. But I think
Yeah.
it's great that there are those you know avenues to make money from your work. I'm just super curious on music supervision and licensing. Do you guys strictly work with like how does that work in the sense that you're working with these production studios or an HBO? Do they come to you for certain shows, or do you reach out to studios to say, hey, we have this artist or we have this song, I think it would feel or go great with the script or the scene? How does that work?
Yeah, it's both. We've built up a reputation to where, if they have a project, they'll come to us and say, "Hey, we think that you all will be great for it." And a lot of times it's because of a project that we've done that may be a similar genre or similar soundscape. So they're like, "Oh, you did that project, so we believe you can do this project." So sometimes that, and then it's other times you hear about a project, you see something posted on Variety or Deadline or Instagram, and you're like, that sounds like a really cool project, and you'll find out who are the leads for that project, and then you reach out and say, hey, it might be an introduction to yourself and your company, or it might be they know you and you say, hey, we work together on this other thing, let's work together on this new thing. So it could be either or. There's really no rhyme or reason of how it goes, but I think the bottom line is that you have to have, quality work, good work, because, in this industry, it's all about reputation. And if you don't have the right reputation, then, the cold phone calls and the cold emails don't happen.
Yeah, and it also gives you the opportunity to let the work speak for itself too. You know, if you cold email or DM and reach out and, you know, they ask to see, you know, what other projects you've worked on or what I mean, that was kind of a struggle that I had early on in like 2017 when I was starting off being a videographer. Um, I knew that if I was going to cold DM or cold whatever without any prior work, that's going to be really hard. That's going to be a tough, you know, to have people trust you. And so I used to hop fences at music festivals and sneak backstage or make little side deals with the security to get back there and shoot, you know, photos of the artists and the lineup and stuff like that, and then put together zines to pretty much establish like my own work and make it seem like, oh, I got hired, but really I just hopped the fence. And then eventually when I did that, people started to see the work and then hired me. So I think that that's such an important thing for people to understand is you know, obviously you can have great networking skills, but at the end of the day, people are going to want to see the work and let it speak for itself. And obviously with the reputation that you have too with radio and even just the artist roster, go into to that. Like, who are you excited? Obviously, you're probably excited for the whole team, but you have artists like Josh Levi, for example, who was just nominated for a Grammy. I'm sure that's pretty cool to see
Crazy.
people signed to radio getting experience like that.
Yeah, no, I mean Josh is someone that we believe in all of our artists, but Josh is someone that we're really excited about working with. Um, incredibly talented, and when you get a recognition like the Grammys, like that's like the creme de la creme, especially for our industry. Like, oh, I've been doing the work and now I'm getting recognition. So excited to see continue to develop Josh and see where that goes. And then we have Incognita, who's another amazing artist that we're working with on our team, who just released a project a couple months ago.
I love
um,
her music.
yeah,
She's great.
yeah, I love it too. She's like, I see her posting things like freestyles that she does, and I'm like, yo, we picked a good one. And then we have Timar, who's just an incredible songwriter, just an incredible soul. And she's, currently working on her project that'll come out early 2023. So yeah, you know, we have a roster of some incredible people. We just did a Google program where Google helped fund a couple of artist projects, and then now we had Dre Jack and Jay Stevens, and they came out with incredible projects as well. So you know, we're just excited about continuing that momentum.
Amazing. Well, it is a great team too, even on the back end within, you know, your the people that work for radio. Just super great people to work with. And yeah, how do you feel about like the roster like growing? Are you guys focused on maintaining the roster, or are you guys wanting to grow eventually? What does the growth of radio look like right now?
Yeah, I mean, on the talent side, we'll continue to develop the talent that we currently have. We're looking at a couple signings early next year. You know, we want to continue working with artists. Like there's so much opportunity that we have and that we're providing that we just need talent to be able to plug into those opportunities. So on the talent side, we're continuing to nurture and develop, and then we're looking at some new things. And then, you know, on the rest of the radio business, on the music supervision side, we're looking to take on more projects. You know, we want to grow the company. Like every year, we've had significant growth year over year. But I think, you know, 2023 is going to be the year where it kind of all comes together. I think we have the right staff in place. Obviously, you could always get more hands, bodies, and minds in place to help continue that vision. But I think we're at a good place, so we're just excited to keep it going.
Cool. And one of the things I wanted to touch on too is you guys do these writer camps for artists, and I think that anything in life requires practice, anything that you want to put hours into and get better at. But not only just that, but also surrounding yourself with people that are better than you to challenge you, that you could learn from. And I think that, you know, for example, basketball, you know, you can go by yourself and shoot hoops for, you know, a few hours by yourself, practice free throws. But where the real practice happens is when you're scrimmaging versus other players. And I think it probably works the same with singers and artists and writers. When you're surrounded by very talented people, it'll help you naturally get better, and you can learn from other people. So this writing camp that you guys do is super interesting. It's great for that community. Talk about that and what you guys are, you know, achieving with that.
Yeah, we have writers camps that we call Camp Radio, where essentially, you know, we'll have in that over the weekend, like usually it's like a 2 or 3 day period, we'll create music for a project that we're working on. So we did this for Insecure, we also did this for Rap Shit, and we'll bring people in and we'll say, hey, you know, we're gonna set up this room, this studio, and we want you to create music that's about friendships, or we want you to create music that's about breakups, right? And in that room, we give the people the briefs, and sometimes we give the artists the briefs, and sometimes we'll show them, you know, the scene that they'll be writing for, just to give them inspiration. And you know, they'll just go in there and they'll start cooking. So you have, you know, a songwriter in the room, you'll have a producer or two in the room, multiple songwriters, you'll have multiple artists, and they'll just work on creating, you know, a sound or music for that scene. You know, we have an open bar as well, so you know, has a little bit of a party event atmosphere to it.
Yep.
And then at the end of it, we also give awards to the MVP, like songwriter MVP, you know, producer and MVP artist. So we're looking to continue that. We've done, you know, about 4 or 5 over the course of a couple of years, but we're looking to do more soon.
Well, I love it. We're obviously at the end of the year, you know, approaching the end of December here, which is insane. But what are some things, you know, that you're looking forward to in 2023, whether it be with radio or other ventures? What are some goals that you have with the company? What are some things that you'd like to see happen in the new year, and where that energy is going to be directed?
Yeah, I think, you know, really next year is really going to be about optimizing radio in terms of radio. Like I think, you know, over the past couple of years, and especially this year, we've shown what we're capable of, and you know what we can bring to the table. And now it's just about being bigger and being the best in class at the different things that we do. So I'm hyper focused on that, on just being best in class, and like really like being strategic and thoughtful about our next steps. The artists that we work with, I want to continue to raise their profile. I want to, you know, continue to have success with them. You know, like I said, Josh Levi getting a Grammy nomination, great. Now let's win one. You know, let's get more nominations. Let's get increased streams across the board. Let's take on more music supervision projects. So I'm looking forward to a year of growth, and really just continue to solidify ourselves in the music industry as like a power player.
I love it. Well, Benoni, I love radio. I love everything that you guys do. And, for those of you listening, if you haven't already, check out their roster of artists. Super talented. Like I said, Incognita is super dope. I actually saw her open up for Josh when we were filming in San Francisco. And they always say, whether you're performing in front of 20 people or 20,000, that old quote there, you always got to bring the energy, and I think that everyone within the radio camp definitely brings the energy. So I'm stoked for you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time today to chat, and cheers to another successful year of wins with radio and everything that you guys are doing.
No, thank you, and congrats on the new podcast, man. Always loved your insight, your thoughts. So I'm excited to see where you go with this.
Thank you so much. We'll have to do a part two halfway through next year to see where we're at.
Love it.
All right, Benoni, thanks so much.
No problem. Take it easy.